So Leo, why are headlines so important?
Well, I believe they're the most important words of the entire post. First of all, if someone comes to visit your blog, the first thing they'll do is scan the headlines or the titles of your posts. They don't go and read every post. They're going to go and look at those headlines and decide which ones are important enough or interesting enough for them to dive into. But second of all, if someone else links to your blog from another blog, what they usually do is link to using the words of the headline. And so if you write a post on 5 great types of posts that you should write, another blog might link to that and say go read Corbett Barr's 5 great types of posts you should write, and that'll be the link itself. Mm-hmm. And that becomes kind of Google juice. But it becomes a way for that audience of that blogger to decide whether they want to click through to the link. Mm-hmm. It also becomes, the headlines usually become the thing that's shared on Twitter and Facebook and other kinds of sharing media. And it's also the thing in someone's inbox. If they subscribe through email, the headline will be the subject of that email from you. And so that will make them decide whether they're going to open it up or ignore it. And so all of those things make the reader decide whether they're going to take action, share it, click through the link, read the post itself, read the email. And all of those things are, done within a few words, maybe, 3 to 10 words at the most.
So what should a good headline do? What should it achieve?
Okay, I think there's 3 things that a good headline does. And not all good headlines do all 3 of them equally well, but they all usually do a little bit of each one. So the first one is get the reader's attention. And if it's boring, they'll just pass by. So it has to get their attention. Second one is it has to convey some benefit to the reader. One of my first ones that did really well was top 10 ways top 10 motivation hacks or something like that. So it was, hacks was a kind of a silly word, but it got their attention. Top 10 also got their attention, but the motivation part was a thing that people really wanted. They need motivation in their lives, and so this was promising to give them some benefit. It also gets their curiosity. So a good headline will get you curious to read more. And that's really all you want, is for them to kind of start reading the post. And that's really all a good headline achieves. And so top 10 and hacks also was a way to get them curious. What are the top 10? Well, I know a bunch of them, so I don't really need that much motivation, but I am curious to know what Leo's top 10 are, or top 5 or whatever. So that's why list headlines work really well, is because they get you curious about what are the specific things in that list. So those are the 3 things: get attention, convey benefit, and get you curious.
So in that case, the benefit was the motivation, you're saying. So that's something that I want. So I know that if I read this post, I'm going to learn something that might help me get closer to that goal. Right,
but the headline could have just been motivation tips. And that does get some benefits, but it doesn't really get your attention. Mm-hmm. And it might not be that curious for you. It sounds kind of bland, motivation tips, okay, maybe I'll check it out. But top 10, all of a sudden, or the weirdest motivation tips, like what is that? I want to know what the weirdest ones are. Or 3 weird, you see ads like that. Yep. Weird is apparently a word that gets people curious. Uh-huh. 3 weird things that'll give you 6-pack abs. Well, okay, I want to know what those weird things are. So yeah, weird, or just some kind of thing that gets your curiosity.
So when you're writing a post, when do you start thinking about the headline? When do you personally start thinking about the headline?
The headline's the first thing that I do. So when I start writing a post, I've got a blank page. The headline, I'll just type out a rough draft of the headline. It doesn't have to be anything that I kind of really, get anguish over. It's just, I just type out basically what I think this post is about. And the simple reason for that is, first of all, if you do that, then you've already started the fingers moving, so you're typing. But also, it gives you some kind of focus. You know what problem that it is that you're solving, the reader's problem that you're solving. Again, it could just be entertainment or news, but a lot of times it's some kind of thing that the reader needs, some problem that they need solved. How do I shoot good video? How do I grow my business? How do I write things that will attract readers? So those are problems that they have that they need solved. And they might have some idea of how to solve it, but you might have a solution that's unique that they want. So if you write the headline first, you've crystallized in your mind what the problem is that you're solving, and you can start diving into that. And so that really focuses your writing of the post. Is, you could just start rambling about whatever you thought about that day, but if you know what problem that you're solving is, then you can dive into that once you start writing the post.
So it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily start because you're looking for the best headline or the perfect headline. No. It's just that it actually makes the rest of your post more effective because you sort of know what the reader's going to be expecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after you've written this real quick draft version of a headline and then you've written the draft of your post, how do you get to the final headline? Like, how do you actually figure out what the best headline is?
Yeah, well, so the first one that you write could be crap, and a lot of times it is because you haven't actually written the post yet. So now that you've written the post, you have a better idea of what it is that you're doing to address the reader's problem. Maybe you've kind of refined the actual problem that you're solving through the writing process. And maybe you've come up with some stuff that's really interesting that wasn't in the original headline. So you can go back and put that in, the kind of weird things or curious things that you didn't think of when you first started writing. And so now you've got a bunch of information that you can kind of throw into the headline. And that first draft usually is not your best headline. And if you can go through and just do 3 or 4 different iterations of the headline, maybe look at other people's headlines that are doing really well. Sometimes I'll go to social media and see what's doing well, just for inspiration to kind of see different headline ideas that I might not have thought of. Another thing I'll do is go to magazines. Magazines are really good at headlines because the things that are on the cover of the magazine are what get you to buy the magazine.
Right.
And so if they have
it's the most important page of a magazine, right?
If they have sucky headlines on the magazine, then you're not going to buy the magazine and the sales will go down. Good headlines, sales go up, and it's the same thing for a blog. And so you look at these headlines that have gone through years and years of testing through magazine sales, and you can see these work. Now, does that mean you just need to follow it? No, but they can give you some ideas of things that you can try in your different iterations. So I usually do 3 or 4 iterations, and if I'm stuck, like can't think of a different one, then I'll go and look at other people's examples.
So do you have any formulas that you use, or do you know of any formulas that people can use? Is that a good idea to use a formula, or is that a bad idea?
Yeah. Formulas are good places to start, I think. And a lot of times, you can just use a formula and it'll work. And other times, you might just want to start with the formula and then kind of play around with it and alter it. And other times, just break the rules. But definitely, formulas. I gave an example earlier of top 10 motivation tips or whatever. So the top 10 it's a list headline, and list headlines are one of the best headlines for many different reasons. One is that it will tell you exactly what you're going to get. This is not a surprise. It's not like when I open it up, I don't know how many things I'm getting. I'm getting 10. Right. So it's very specific. And that specificity also gives your curiosity. What are those specific 10 or 5 things that, who are Esquire's top 100 hot women? Well, I know who hot women are, but I want to know their specific top 100, right. And who's number 1, right? So that gets your curiosity going. It also tells you that this is not going to be a waste of your time. If there's a list in this post, you can quickly get the most important points out of the post. And so yes, it's formulaic, but there's a reason why the formula works. There's many other types of formula headlines, and we'll give a list at in the reader materials.
Okay.
I definitely encourage people to go and look at the formulas that work on sites like Dig and Reddit. Actually, Dig is one of the best ones because the headlines there are really useful headline formulas. And then Twitter and then Facebook are other good ones. And just
see what's being shared.
Yeah, see what's being shared. A good one that I'll go to once in a while is popearls.com. And it's just an aggregate of all these things that are hot on all these different sites. And you can even look at the New York Times and Esquire magazine and Lifehacker and all these other sites that have that use headline formulas, but they work.
Yep.
And you can kind of just go on one page, see a whole bunch of headlines all listed. So that's a good way to kind of get a feel for what works and what doesn't.
Have you noticed that any certain headline formulas have become less effective over time? You mentioned the list post and things like that. And I know that some bloggers are like, oh, those are boring because everybody does them. But everybody does them, including magazines and newspapers, because they still work.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that they've gone down in effectiveness, or is there anything that you shy away from now?
Well, the problem is if a formula is overused, then it has less and less effectiveness. So there's decreasing returns, diminishing returns. And so if the reader is seeing the top 10 thing over and over and over, they'll be like, okay, I'm no longer curious about top 10s. So you can't overuse the same. You can't just use one formula and go over and over with it. You have to kind of throw that in every once in a while. And I use it. I think I overused list type headlines in my first year. They worked, and so I kept using them. And then I realized people were tired of it. They're like, all you do is top 10 lists. And I'm like, well, that's true. Maybe I should vary it. And now I rarely do them.
Yep.
But once in a while, I'll throw them in if I think it's something that's fun. So yeah, you should definitely not. If there's list headlines are probably the most common example. But if you see everybody doing them, you got to change it up. And because one of the things is you have to be different. And if you're just the same as everybody else, why should anyone read you? And so that's one of the things about effective writing is being different than most people, than the mainstream. And you have to stand out in some way. And if your headlines are just the same as everybody else, then you won't stand out. So definitely look at the formulas, use them as a starting point. But if it's overdone, be very judicial in your use of them.
So is there a time when you should break the rules? You mentioned earlier that a headline should tell the reader a little bit about the benefit that they're going to get. It should invoke curiosity. We talked about different styles of headlines that work. Are there times when you should break the rules and throw all of that out the window? Yeah,
absolutely. Again, one of the reasons is to stand out. And so if everybody is following the rules, then by breaking the rules, you stand out. You differentiate yourself. So if you can stand out by breaking the rules in some way, then you should do it. Another reason, to back up a little bit, before you start breaking the rules, you have to learn the rules and maybe even play by them for a little bit. So it's good to kind of follow some of these rules and the formulas. Yeah. But another reason, if you've played with them and you've learned them, and you can you feel comfortable in breaking them and you know when to break them. But another reason is truth. And so if a list headline or some kind of formula headline or some kind of attention-grabbing headline isn't true to the post, the reader will feel that. And so if it's a big sensational headline and then they go and read the post and it doesn't seem to fit, then it's just like, oh, you just tricked me to get into this post. And so that's totally not respectful of the reader. It doesn't put the reader first to kind of trick them into the post. If you're going to have a sensational headline, like the most shocking thing you've ever read about blogging, then you better have the most shocking thing they've ever read about blogging in there. If it's just like, oh, okay, I already knew that, that wasn't shocking at all, then it's like...
You're crying wolf, and then the reader's not going to come back again.
Yeah, that you've eroded trust, and you've shown that you don't respect the reader. So the headline has to fit in tone and just basically in truth to the post. And that's the mistake that a lot of people do, is they'll get that attention. And so, if attention is, if attention getting is not true to what you're writing, then you have to, and not true to your audience. Maybe they don't want you to be screaming at them. They want a more gentle approach. Depends on the audience. Then you shouldn't follow those rules. Attention getting is not an important thing for that kind of situation. So you kind of have to get a feel for the reader, what they want, feel for your post and what's true to that post, and then see whether you're going to follow those rules or not. Sometimes curiosity is not the most important thing. Sometimes you just want to say, this is what you're going to get, come and get it. If you don't want that, then go on to something else. So again, it's something that you kind of learn through experience, and as you know very well. But I encourage you to kind of play with that, figure out what works and what doesn't. Sometimes readers will react. I saw a post just recently in the Guardian. Actually, it was probably an article, but I call it a post. Anyway, it was how I learned a language in 22 hours. I don't know if you saw that, but it was, attention grabbing, definitely got my curiosity, and people read it. And really, the guy learned it in 3 months, but he spent 22 hours on this one app, spread out over 3 months, and he didn't really learn the whole language. He learned 1,000 words. Right. So the readers in the comments, I read the comments, and they felt the same way that I did, which is that we were tricked. And the problem with that is that the article was great. Yeah. The article writer did not write that headline. editor did to try and get people's attention and curiosity, and it worked. But it was not true to the post. And so people felt, ripped off. They're like, this is, another blatant, deception. And so it erodes trust with the writer who did not write that and the publication overall.
And I should mention, I'm guilty of this. I actually wrote a post one time called How to Learn a Language in 96 Hours. And it was spread out over 3 months. It was the time that I'd spent in class and things like that. And for people listening to this, it might seem like, the ultimate sin to, mess with your reader's trust or whatever. But on the other hand, the experimentation is critical. You're not going to learn whether or not that's effective or not until you try it once in a while. So don't be afraid to experiment and try some different
Take risks, definitely. And definitely, go with the rules. But after a while, you learn what parts of the rules matter and what don't to your audience, to you, and to the post that you're writing. But yeah, this guy, 22 hours is, like 4 times faster than 96.
It's like 5-minute abs or whatever.
So the next guy's going to say, I did it in 10 hours.
Exactly.
There's always the shorter than the 4-hour work week. So 4-minute work week.